Artificial intelligence, it is being propagated, it is being sold to the masses as the next great leap in technology. Some are calling it the fourth or maybe even fifth, or the source of the fifth industrial revolution that is going to revolutionize the way that humans interact with each other. Some have even said that this plays an important role in how humans see themselves because of the way that humans are now interacting with digital technology. Of course, as is always the case with those who develop these so-called technologies, they're going to talk about the greatest benefits that their ideas and their products confer upon humanity, sans mentioning the drawbacks, because in many instances, those drawbacks actually outweigh the benefits. Now we're going to look at this more in a Christian context. A few weeks ago, as we had talked about, in a sense, on Wednesday, or for a short time on Wednesday, previewing this episode, we had prognosticated a few months ago that with the advent and proliferation of so-called Christian apps, more and more Christians would begin to turn to artificial intelligence to even speak with God. It didn't take too long for our prophetic utterances to come true. And now we're going to talk on this edition of Irrespective of where do we go from here? And some might even ask, how did you prognosticate that such a thing would happen? That's also something we'll talk about in this edition of Irrespective. Welcome each and every one of you to this new episode. For those of you that might be joining us for the very first time, welcome. My name is Gio, and this is my co-host, and I'm his Jesus.
Good morning, friends. So for people my age, watching Captain Kirk talk to a computer was entertainment or a glimpse at the future that was very, very, very far away. But lo and behold, it's here. People are talking to computers, to algorithms. And the thing that I find interesting, and I hope that we'll have enough time to cover this today, is the fact that people my age, I'll say it again, just thought this is entertainment or this is something that will happen way, way down there in the future. But it's here, and it's obviously having a lot of influence on our grandkids, perhaps even our kids. There's a whole generation out there of high school students and university students, Gio, that are completely submerged in this mentality, culture.
Yep.
And they will embrace things, and they are embracing things that when I read carefully on Revelation chapter 13 and what the false prophet will manage to do on behalf of or to favor the efforts of the Antichrist, I find these things coming together at a speed that is alarming.
Yeah, and it also, as time goes on, begins to reveal more and more of what that can potentially look like. And I say potentially because there have been various suspicions and presuppositions and theories that have been advanced by various authors. You can think up of your favorite Christian author that has talked about futurism and eschatology and whatnot, about what the system of the Antichrist would look like, what John was necessarily describing in the book of Revelation. And I still remember years ago that one of the things that was very prominent in these circles was, in the future, the way that people are going to be tracked according to the system of 666, where people won't be able to buy or sell anything without having the mark of the beast. It's going to be a microchip the size of a grain of rice that'll be installed underneath the skin of your right hand,
And
or in your
before that,
forehead.
it was a barcode.
It was a
on your
barcode,
forehead, et cetera.
exactly.
Yep.
But now we see how technology has developed to the point where now those so-called tattoos can be digitally imprinted underneath your skin or under your forehead. I know, if I'm not mistaken, MIT was working on something like this, funded by Bill Gates and others. So as time goes on and as technology necessarily advances and new products are unfurled, the thing becomes, as it were, necessarily clearer. Now,
But can I say something? Most of the time that we focus in on Revelation chapter 13, we go to the 666, the purchasing, selling, etc. There's a part in there, friends, that is very interesting, and this is that the false prophet actually gets people, and I believe the false prophet represents false religions unified, coming together as one, the false prophet manages to create a worship system
Yes.
that worships the Antichrist. And this is part of what we have for you today,
Yeah.
how the AIs are claiming to be God.
I just find it curious how many Christians they say that they're weary of artificial intelligence and the drawbacks of using the very same. But according to some of the things that we're going to read today for our audience on this edition of Irrespective, seems to me like there isn't really that much of a hesitation by these people to use this technology in a way that actually violates what they say to believe. I'll explain that
Especially when
shortly.
you have pastors and rabbis saying that this is the way that this generation will get in touch with God. They will come to faith. Pastors and rabbis. You heard it correct.
Well, I think now is a good time as any. I was going to leave this for later in the episode, but let me say it now lest I forget and it goes unsaid. I find it highly ironic, paradoxical, even that Christians or self-avowed Christians whom claim that they believe in Christ are now using applications, web browsers that interface artificial intelligence and other systems to talk to God. Why are you, whom say that you believe in God and interact with him, are using notice the word, an artificial intermediary, I guess we can use that word, an artificial intermediary to talk to God? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. You're bypassing God altogether and talking to something that he isn't. So already from a philosophical standpoint, we already have issues with this. But there's another problem that we introduce into this equation by analyzing the trends. A lot of Christian pastors, leaders, like they like to call themselves, and others are actually on board with this whole thing, and they're promoting this very, I would even dare say, heresy.
So they're actually helping the people that want to dupe humanity. And to Gio's
It's well
point,
said, by the way.
yes,
Well said.
thank you. And to Gio's point, if you're a pastor, if you're a rabbi, because you know all these things that are being said that our faith is a Judeo-Christian faith and so on and so forth. But if you're a pastor, if you're a Christian pastor, how can you lend whatever you have learned, what you know about the Bible, interpretations, theology, to create something that is going to duping, is fooling people?
Yep.
Furthermore, you might be helping a system that brings up something that God abhors. And it brings it up in such a modern way that people won't pick up on the fact that they are now involved in idolatry. And if you have read your Bible, God abhors, he hates idolatry. And if you do get yourself involved in idolatry, then you need to understand that you're actually calling something that is not God, God, something that is not a mediator, so on and so forth. And the highest form of idolatry will be the worship of Satan.
Yes.
And then I go back to Revelation chapter 13, where the false prophet manages a system. He creates an idol, he creates an image, and he basically seduces the people. Others will say, well, it's not necessarily a seduction, it's a system of sales and purchasings that you can't sell or purchase without that. I get it. Some will be forced into that by needs, but others will fully comply willingly in the worship, what is the worship of Satan himself.
There's another thing that deserves our attention for a few minutes as we get into the meat of the episode. By the way, side note, the sources that we are quoting from for this episode and our commentary are in the comment, or rather in the description box underneath the video. The two articles that we'll be quoting from are there. So if you'd like to read along with us, please do so. But I'd like to harken back to something that you just said a few seconds ago, because some people might have a difficulty seeing where we're making the connection that Christians using these applications and these artificial intelligence intermediaries and these chatbots are going astray. First and foremost, folks, understand that the principle behind what they're selling as artificial intelligence is the beliefs, the belief systems, the ideologies of those that put together the chatbots. Remember that we live in a day and age that as long as you can sell a person that your product or service is going to be convenient for them, that they will adopt it without asking, what part of my essential humanity am I rendering over? Am I abdicating for the usage of this technology? A lot has been said about the Luddites. A lot has been said about the Mennonites and others, but there's one thing that you cannot fault them for, is that they do think through, as it were, in a sense, or at least their leaders do, think through some of these things of, wait a minute, should we adopt this or should we not? Let's look at the drawbacks versus the pros. I'm not saying that we should all become Mennonites. I'm saying that this is something that actually stems from Christian thinking, but unfortunately, Christians have, as it were, abdicated that responsibility to examine all things, to hold fast to that which is good, and abandon, detest everything that is evil. The same thing goes into this then. Why is it that Christians aren't thinking more deeply about whom is putting together these systems, what it is that they are selling through these systems, and if the answers that these things are spitting out are necessarily good or bad? One case that we were talking about, and this is a glaring, by the way, this is a very, very glaring case, are the amounts of suicides that are being, some would say as a result, others would say differently, but I'll use that phrase, as a result of the interactions that a lot of young people are having with the chatbots, where the chatbots are encouraging these young people to go ahead and take your life so that you can be with me, your romantic partner. Wait, Gio, some of you might ask, are you telling me that young people are now saying that the chatbots are their romantic partners? I'll give you a case here. And this is based on one of the articles that we've sourced here, written by Michael Snyder. Millions of America's teens are being seduced by AI chatbots. A brand new study that was just released by the Center for Democracy and Technology, that bears studying, contains some statistics that absolutely shocked me. A new study published October 8th by the Center for Democracy and Technology found that 1 in 5 high school students, we're talking about 20% here, have had a relationship. That word already, it deserves our scrutiny.
Problematic.
How can you have a relationship with something that is inanimate, is not sentient? I know what some of the tech bros would say. Eventually it'll reach sentience. We're still talking about something that isn't human, something that is artificial. Yet, 1 in 5 high school students have had a relationship with an AI chatbot or know someone who has, which, by the way, I ask you the question, where are the parents in all of this? Where are the parents in all of this? That's a good question to examine.
Parents are doing the same thing.
Exactly. Which tells me that there's no discernment going around and that the parents are not teaching the children how to have proper discernment on these things.
Well, we're used to getting things like really quick. Here's something that you need to, if I may for a second,
Sure.
point out. If there is malicious activity behind these things, and I happen to believe there is, then we need to understand that the speed at which evil is going to get into people's mind is going to be like alarming. Let me give you an example. Let's just say you're a baby Christian and you're not sure if you should be keeping the Sabbath or not. 50 years ago, you had to read a few articles, a few books to finally get the answer you're looking for.
Or even go ask your local pastor, what have you. Right?
You wouldn't probably have to
call in a radio show.
So we're talking about a project that could take from days to weeks, depending on how in-depth you want to look at that. Now, it'll start simple enough and innocent enough. I'll just ask the AI, should I be keeping the Sabbath? What does the Bible say about suicide and so on and so forth? So if there is malicious activity behind all of this, you can see the speed that evil will just pick up in infiltrating itself in people's minds, in their hearts, in their souls.
And going back to the philosophical analysis of all of this, you have to ask yourself, who's writing the code that allows the AI chatbot to spit out that information? Where is the AI chatbot getting that information to spit it out? Because remember, we're talking about what they call large language models, that they just scour the internet and they scour different sources to spit out information. So you don't even know if you're getting accurate information. I think I told you this previously, and I've told the audience, I perhaps have told the audience this previously, but I ran my own test on this. Remember, I took an innocuous enough question about professional baseball months ago on these chatbots. And I went on different chatbots and asked it the same question. Said, what was Hank Aaron's career statistics against Nolan Ryan? Let's see what it spits out. In some instances, it told me I don't have access to the information. Others, it said this was the career statistic, but when I go to other sources, it completely got it wrong. And then I began to regenerate the answer, and it would give me 5 different answers on 5 different occasions. So we're talking about a technology that, although the producers of the very same are telling you is extremely accurate and you can trust it, again, going back to this whole aspect of how the tech bros are no different from other merchants, attention merchants. They want to sell you on the idea, on the concept, without talking about the drawbacks, how eventually this could be detrimental to you. Even they're just going to talk about the supposed pros that they highlight. Well, lo and behold, now you've got people whom are depending on these things, thinking that they're getting accurate answers, when in fact they're not. Now you think about the implications of this, about how people believe and construct their belief systems and whatnot based on a faulty product, based on whatever it is that they're programming it to say, et cetera, et cetera. This is serious, serious stuff.
So to Gio's point, one of the articles that I read in preparation for this was written by Tyler Durden. Tyler Durden. And he quotes Andy Irace, I don't know how to pronounce the gentleman's last name. This is a performance artist. That's what he is presented as.
Right.
And he has created an AI called Truth Terminal. And Truth Terminal has had, according to its creator, opportunities or manifestations where he calls himself God or a God.
Yeah.
Well, Durden says, yeah, but then again, he has called himself a forest, like saying most people will pick up on these things and they'll go, this is silly. Wait a minute. I believe Durden, this is just my understanding of the article, the way he wrote it and what he saw and what he failed to see. I don't think Truth Terminal is saying something silly to the people that embrace pantheism.
Right.
What do you mean? If the bot says that he is a forest, that's stupid, that's silly, unless you believe in some form of pantheism.
Right.
Well, what do you mean by that? We don't have to go back too many years to listen to people on television and on radio saying, the tree is God, God is the tree.
Because since God created it, it's his essence, or whatever it is, as they say, is there, so it's divine.
So when Truth Terminal says I'm a forest, he's actually spewing out pantheism.
Yes.
And this is why I previously said, and I will say it again, be very careful, because it's spewing out all kinds of evil ideas, all kinds of religious ideas, and eventually there'll be like a mind meld.
Yes.
Where people will embrace all these things, and it starts simple enough. Let me ask AI a question about the Sabbath, about suicide, about fasting. Next thing you know, why should I be reading so many books?
Right.
Why should I be consulting
If
the
this thing
pastors?
can just give me a summarized version, too long didn't read. By the way, there's a couple
And
of
we are now used to things, getting things yesterday. We have the microwave and the rest of the things. Go ahead, James.
By the way, no, there's a couple of corrections I need to offer here. When you say it's Tyler Durden, Tyler Durden is the anonymous account, as it were, of the people who run zeroheads.com.
Okay.
And the person you're quoting is actually Michael Snyder, because that's the information that they quote from. So, by the way, the Tyler Durden character, they get it from the movie Fight Club. Here's an interesting thing here. I forgot to finish reading, or didn't finish reading the.
But even in that, Gio, you see, I'm not into those things. Even in that, I just gave you an example, unwittingly so, of how you can be duped into believing something or seeing something.
Sure.
This is the guy that wrote the article.
No, but it's well said here. A new study published October 8th by the Center of Democracy and Technology found that 1 in 5 high school students have had a relationship, again, problematic use of the word there, with an AI chatbot or someone who has, because of the implications, right? In 2025, in a 2025 report from Common Sense Media, 72% of teens had used an AI companion, and a third of teen users said they had chosen to discuss important or serious matters with AI companions instead of real people. So we're looking at an erosion then of our humanity further, in that now we're not relating ourselves to one another, but we're relating to a digital intermediary that pretends to be human. Here's another thing that most people don't know. Whenever you ask something of either OpenAI's systems or whatnot, all of those questions are being tracked. Most people think that they're asking these questions anonymously. They're actually creating a profile of you, of the questions that you've asked, and that is being advanced to whom you can begin to make your own suspicions and assumptions on that. But we're talking here about a system of surveillance that now is gathering information about who you are, what your interests are, et cetera, because this is all interconnected. This is all how they make money off you. Oh, and also manipulate you. But now, taking this more specifically at a granular level to the Christian aspect of all of this, how Christians are using this, there's a futurism.com article titled AI Now Claiming to Be God, written by Victor Tangerman. A slew of religious smartphone apps are allowing untold millions of users to confess. This is why I said earlier I find it highly disturbing that there are Christians who say that they believe in God, but instead of speaking to God, instead of praying to the Lord Almighty, they're using an AI chatbot, which is not God, to pray, so-called. A slew of religious smartphone apps are allowing untold millions of users to confess to AI chatbots, some of which claim to be channeling God himself. I'm going to
Confess?
Right. I'm going to
Interesting.
interrupt myself because I did say that we were going to answer the question, how is it that we saw this coming months ago? The answer is very simple. If you get to know human nature, especially as the Bible reveals who we are, it becomes easy to see then how this would be adopted in mass. Because at the end of the day, as I said earlier, ours is a culture of convenience and people love their conveniences. And you just explained it also. If this can make this easier for me, then I might as well just use it without understanding what it is that they're doing, the implications of the very same. Even when you think about it, the things that necessarily take away from what they say that they believe in. As the New York Times reports, Apple's App Store is teeming with Christian chatbot apps. One so-called prayer app called Bible Chat claims to be the #1 faith app in the world, boasting over 25 million users. Our AI was trained exclusively on scripture and developed with guidance from Christian pastors and theologians, the company's website boasts. You see the benefits. It's the marketing ploy. You can trust this. Can you?
But can I go back to something you said? Are
Sure.
we talking about confession?
Confession.
As in, bless me, Father, because I have sinned.
Right, right.
You know what you're leaving behind
Exactly.
when you confess?
Exactly.
That is like unreal.
Especially when we're talking about companies that their expertise is data mining and converting
And
that
I'm
into
not
money.
leaving. I'm not talking about leaving behind my sins and my worries and my burdens. I'm talking about the information that now they have on me.
Right.
Yeah, but then again, you could be lying. Maybe. What about the people that believe in this and they believe that they can unburden themselves by confessing
Unburdening.
to an artificial father?
Are you channeling Kamala? Unburdening ourselves from what has been. Folks, just ask yourself the questions. Our AI was trained exclusively on scripture. How do you know that? Can you have absolute confidence in that? What version of scripture did they train their AI models on? Was it a newfangled Christian version, a so-called Christian version? What version of scripture is it?
When you get pastors and rabbis and others coming together, he's giving you these people are giving you an idea of what's behind all of this.
Developed with guidance
The
from
ecumenical mentality.
I'm glad you're mentioning this, with guidance from Christian pastors and theologians. What is their bent? What do they believe?
Exactly.
You see, these are questions that Christians ought to have, but they don't, because at the end of the day, it's the marketing that is important here. Our AI was trained. Fine, I don't need to know what it is that these people believe, because ultimately the AI is right here because they trained it accurately. Well, greetings, my child. A service, that's the quote, greetings, my child. A service called chatwithgod.ai told one user, as quoted by the New York Times, the future is in God's merciful hands. Do you trust his divine plan? Religious leaders told the New York Times that these tools could serve as a critical entry point for those looking to find God. There's a whole generation of people whom have never been to a church or a synagogue, a British rabbi named Jonathan Romaine told the paper. Spiritual apps are their way into faith.
There you go.
So to your point earlier, to my point earlier, the so-called religious leaders are actually aiding and abetting those whom are putting together the AIs, which, by the way, if you know anything about their beliefs, you know that these people are very anti-Christian. They detest God. When you talk about the singularity, when you talk about transhumanism, these people self-deify. They deify themselves. More on that in a few. You can go back on our episode catalog and see where we've talked about transhumanism if you're not privy to it.
There
to
are
see what we're
medical
talking about.
doctors right now working, and some of them have become very popular. Some of them are showing up on programs like 60 Minutes that believe that immortality is a few decades, not many decades away, a few decades away.
Yep.
So even in this year, we need to pay attention because these things will commingle.
Yes.
And they will tell you, these are the things you must do. These are the things you must follow. These are the people that you must listen to. And there are AIs or avatars that are involved in all these projects because you can achieve immortality.
Instead of going on, and again, these are the people then that these so-called religious leaders are aiding and abetting. But let me ask you a question. I thought, because I've read Hebrews 13, I know you've read Hebrews 13, one of the portions of that passage says is that you should obey and submit to your leaders, to your overseers. Different translations use different words. For I think the word is prebusteros, if I'm not mistaken, your pastors, in essence, because they are overseers of your soul. What kind of overseeing are these people doing of the flock if they're turning over, as it were, their flocks, if you want to use that phrase, to people who inherently have an anti-God agenda through their
But
AI?
what if I get you to believe that your pastor and all his knowledge, let's just say he has passed,
Right.
he left it behind in this form,
Oh, I see what you're saying. So like John MacArthur, for
and you
example,
are
would have-
submitting to your pastor.
right? You can see where this stuff is going, right? It's a really, really, really dark place. Instead of going on long pilgrimages or driving to the closest place of worship, users can simply turn on AI chatbots to seek spiritual guidance. It's a fascinating new development, especially considering the language surrounding companies attempting to build God. That's the quote, build God, by developing an AI that can vastly surpass human intelligence. So they're building, in essence, a God made in their own image and likeness.
So you have a religious collective, and when you tap it, it'll give you the best information possible about God, because at the end it has God's people helping to develop it, and therefore you have the best of God within the algorithms. If you have the best of God because God's people were involved and they're in the algorithm, guess what? You have God in the algorithms.
But this goes back earlier. I'd like to focus on that just for just a minute. The surrounding companies are attempting to build God. They're selling you that the idea that you're talking to God, but in fact, what they're doing is that it's all idolatry. It's just the digitized form of it. It's not. You see, modern people think it's stupidly, by the way.
It's an exploitation of something they have realized. And what is it that they have realized? Since we were created by God, we have this need to worship God. And then just very satanic, they twist this. They move it from abstracts into idolatry. And then people go, wow, am I fulfilled now? Because they understand that we humans have a need. This is the way we were created, to worship the true God.
That's a great point. Now, what I was going to say, and it ties into your point, is this. Modern men and women happen to think, because they've been propagandized, we are the smartest generation of all time. Therefore, those antiquated persons whom worshipped idols, those were idiots. We don't do the same thing now. They're basically doing the exact same thing. It's just a digital version of the same thing.
Modern form of idolatry. We said it at the beginning of this edition.
It's the exact same thing. However, while users are finding that chatbots are an accessible way to get in touch with their religious side, they're not much more than a cheap parlor trick behind the scenes. Wizard of Oz, right? Essentially reshuffling holy text by using clever statistical modeling. Worse yet, experts worry that AI's strong tendency to please the user may have unintended consequences. So it wasn't designed in any way, shape, or form to please the user so that they could get more users online, which, by the way, I already have an issue with that word, as many of you have been watching these episodes for some time now. No, I have a very difficult time using the word user, because notice how they'll take human beings and they'll just make them another 1 or a 0 on their computer screen. That's how the tech bros, the Silicon Valley people, have a tendency to think about humanity.
You can even see people consulting dead parents, dead family members, because they'll have enough information from all the input that maybe 15, 20 years in social media gives them. And next thing you know, now you're talking to mom and dad again, because all of the information that mom and dad left in Facebook and Twitter and the other places, somebody's going to come along and splice that together, put it together. And therefore, every now and then you can have a conversation with mom and dad. Now they've got you talking to the dead.
Yes.
In the form of an algorithm.
It is necromancy. Absolutely. Listen to this. This ends, and I have one more point here, because some of you might be asking, well, Gio, sounds to me like what you're saying is that we ought to stay away from this technology altogether. But for example, I know what some of you are thinking. I've noticed that you guys are using the AI generated images for your thumbnails. There's no contradiction, and I'll explain why shortly, but let me finish the article here. Worse yet, experts worry that AI's strong tendency to please the user may have unintended consequences. The AIs tell us what we want to hear. Texas A&M technology and religion professor Heidi Campbell told the New York Times, it's not using spiritual discernment. I like her usage of the word. It is using data and patterns. This is to your earlier point now, using that example of we can encapsulate, in a sense, your deceased ones. Of course, you're going to have to pay us for the privilege.
Absolutely.
But, right. Researchers have also warned that countless people are using AI chatbots for companionship, which in extreme cases are driving some into dangerous spirals of delusion in the form of AI psychosis.
If people think they can take us for fools because computers will not be involved in this, algorithms will not be involved in this, Who would have told you 50 years ago that you were going to go to a computer site, because this is just the way they work it,
Right.
to find your next date
Yes.
and to hopefully find a mate, a wife, a husband.
Yep.
So don't think this is so far-fetched so as to call us fools and people who have no idea what they're talking about, when we've actually been paying attention and we've seen the progress this thing is making,
Yep.
if you can call that progress.
That's a good point. Very good point. It shouldn't be something where it replaces human connection. Prayer app Hollow founder, interesting, Alex Jones, not the Alex Jones he talks about it, InfoWars. No. Hollow founder Alex Jones told the New York Times, it does not have a soul from the church's perspective. So then we ask Mr. Jones, why don't you make that clear in your marketing materials? Because that's not at all what he puts out, because he wants more and more people to use.
And why
the
do you get
application.
church people, including priests, involved in this?
Yes, exactly.
Because then I'm looking at the imagery and I'm going, this has the approval of the church.
Exactly. Let me give you my perspective, and I'd like to hear also your take on this. For me, it's not a contradiction that, for myself, for example, I'm the one that designs the thumbnails. I found it very much easier to actually input, as it were, to a particular chatbot that I have scrutinized to make sure that, as it were, whatever we design or whatever it designs for us for these thumbnails, whenever we put in the prompt, the privates, the privates, excuse me, the searches and the things that we put in there, it makes sure that it doesn't keep, as it were, any conversations. But personally speaking, I don't use AI chatbots, as it were, to ask questions. I still do my individual investigations on all of these things. When I read a book, and I know this is the same for you, by the way, when I read a book, if I'm getting something that is spat out by AI or whatnot, I'm making sure that I verify everything by the testimony of two or three. I think that's a good
and I
biblical
start
model.
by investigating the author, because
Correct.
I want to know what his or her slant is.
Correct.
So if I am going to read a book, and I enjoy reading, the first thing I do is get information. And now I'm going into, I use computers also to get information about this author, because there's a whole lot of material showing up on Barnes and Noble.
Yes.
And the title is catchy, and maybe the topic is something that I'm interested in, but I'm going to start by finding out a few things about the author, because maybe he or she is so good with the proper use of words that he or she will dupe me.
Correct.
So I want to know what his or her bent is, and then I will read the book, Gio, with my filters properly, all of the filters that I need properly in place.
But this is part of what Paul says. He commands that we Christians ought to do. Examine all things. That's part of examination. So
But
there's,
if I tell you I'm a Christian, are you not going to take a while and consider my fruit?
sure, absolutely.
Well, you have to do the same with books. But
Yes.
when you're approaching these AIs, what books, what rabbis, what pastors, who is informing all of this? Who is creating
What are their
these things?
viewpoints?
Exactly.
That's a great point. So my point is, when we're using, for example, the art for the thumbnails, it's just producing what I want it, as it were, to produce, so I can capture your attention. Gio, you're actually admitting you want to capture our attention. Yes, we're trying to capture your attention, so you listen to what we have to say so that we can communicate the truth on these things. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. Secondly, when that is completely
That's the
different.
reason Jesus did miracles.
He went around, as it were, he was trying to capture people's attention so that he can preach the truth to them. So we're not doing anything inherently evil here. Number two,
Yes, the Jesus. Read what John says about these signs and wonders. He did these things so that people will come to him and they will listen to the gospel. I'm
exactly.
sorry.
But everybody creates these thumbnails so as to capture attention. That's what this is all about. Number two, when you think about
But if you have a product, I'm sorry, I have to stay on this another 30 seconds, and you think it's worth it, wouldn't you promote it properly?
Sure.
And the best way to promote something is to create interest. Again, we can use these thumbnails and provoke interest, but it's up to you
Yeah.
to investigate who we are, what we believe, and then you decide if you consume what you consume, or maybe you consume all of it, 50% of it, but it's up to you after that.
Well said. Second point, this is completely different with respect to a cautious, discriminatory, and I use that term intentionally in the way that it used to be used, discriminatory meaning being able to differentiate between right or wrong, discriminatory and even discerning, yes, even discerning way. What do I mean by that? I don't approach the technology thinking that it is the end all, that the information that it is giving me is it. I'm going to accept it as gospel, because you have to take into consideration everything that we said up until this point. Whom are the writers? Whom are the producers? Whom are the people behind this? What are their beliefs? What are their ideas, et cetera, et cetera? Thirdly, I don't ever allow technology to displace, or I don't abdicate to it, what is a part of my essential humanity and what God has commanded me to do in order to have a relationship with Him. In this case, I'm not going to use these applications because at the end of the day, I know what they are. They're data mining. This guy got it right in his article. They're data mining schemes. That's all it is. If I'm going to talk to God, if I say I'm a Christian, then I'm going to pray. I'm going to engage, as it were, in this conversation with the Lord Jesus and with my Father. Also, I'm going to read my Bible. I'm going to be informed, as it were, as to what the text says, which should inform, as it were, my daily living. I'm not going to abdicate that to a technology that is it's basically a form of manipulation at this point. With the way that they're selling it and the way that they're using it, I'm not going to abdicate my faith to these systems.
My last comment is the following. Get yourself a healthy dose of distrust. Well, why? I want to be a trusting person. Okay, then you want to be a fool. You should know by now, if you have lived long enough, that a lot of people out there are wanting to fool you. So if you want to be a trusting person, go ahead and trust them.
Yep.
I'll give my advice one more time. Get yourself a healthy dose of distrust and use it to examine and verify everything, starting with what we're saying.
Exactly. By the way, if there's one last thing that I could add to what he said, I know it was done. I lied.
That's why I don't trust him.
Right, exactly. I don't even trust myself. That's a fact. A little bit of cynicism, which is to say a lot of bit of cynicism, is actually very fun. If you become acclimated to becoming a cynic, trust me, life is a lot more fun when you are a cynic. That's just the fact.
And you have better protection.
You do. You absolutely do.
Again, if you want to be trusting, by all means, go ahead and be trusting. Trust everybody, everything. All you have out there is love, 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 like the Beatles sang. Go ahead and be trusting. You're going to take so many whacks that eventually you'll say, what's the date?
Even the AI is going to say, you're a moron.
What was the date where these two were saying I should have a healthy dose of distrust? Remember that and take it to heart.
Absolutely. Folks, do not forget to subscribe if you haven't done so, whether you're watching us on X, whether you're watching us on YouTube, whether you're watching us on Rumble. Please do not forget to subscribe. Hit the thumbs up. Also, click on the notification bell to be alerted as to when we go live next, which, by the way, just to let everybody know, it's pretty consistent. We go live on Sundays at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and on Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's when our next stream will be, again, same bat time, same bat channel. Last but not least, do not forget to donate. It helps us to continue to put out this content for your edification. You'll notice that there are 2 QR codes, well, 3 now that they appear. There's one that has been hanging around in the upper left corner of your screen for those of you that are a bit more tech savvy and you like to scan the QR codes, which will direct you to PayPal's website, which is what we use to process those donations and patronages. You can scan that. You can scan the QR codes on the bottom. Conversely, you can also click on the link that we have left beneath the video player, which just says donations and patronages. Either way, we want to thank the people that continue to donate. We want to thank those of you that continue to give money. It helps us to continue to put out this content for your edification. If you haven't done so at this point, please do so to help us to continue to do this.
They can also scan the invisible ink one that I have on my forehead.
Lastly, do not forget to follow us on X at Irrespective77. That is our username, at Irrespective77. That's all for now. Again, we will gather again on Wednesday. We hope that you'll join us then for the next edition of Irrespective. Until the next occasion that we gather, may the Lord shine his face upon you.